days left to fill the stocking, 12 days left for Christmas shopping. Only got 12 days more. Only got 12 days.
Hi there. Only 12 more shopping days left. You better step on it or
You'll be sorry.
Shopgear.com.
The following is a presentation of the Gear Radio Network.
I believe it's a big challenge for our building to keep things in perspective and to, if we're going to get addicted to anything, let's get addicted to the process.
And with that, we welcome you to Trust the Podcast, powered by Better Live Than Dead and the Gear Radio Network. This is episode number 58.
Episode 58, my peoples. What is good?
Week 14, Buffalo Bills versus the Baltimore Ravens. I am Ryan Wolfe at Wolfe BLTD, joined on the line, on the IndyCar Media Hotline, by the man himself, John Cimino, at I am JC Money. John, how you doing today?
I am doing well, Ryan. Much better than I was yesterday at this time, breaking down the wall to the listeners. When we had tried to put this out a day earlier, and my computer just all of a sudden decided to just have a mind of its own and do absolutely nothing. And I got so furious that I quit. I was like, that's it. I'm done. I can't do this. I'll try again tomorrow.
And I guess I'm glad it didn't happen last night because at this point, at that point, I was falling asleep. I was sitting at the desk and I was kind of like drowsy, droopy face a little. I was like, I'm going to fall asleep. We probably should just.
Oh, hey, a wide open drop by Jamison Crowder in the end zone. How very Jets like.
That's beautiful. Well, hey, speaking of the Jets are playing the Ravens, which is a good segue back to our podcast here.
Yes, indeed.
I want to let you know before we get started, you can hear us on BetterLiveThanDead.com, GearNetwork.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Also, big shout out to our listeners on the Bullhorn Podcast app. It looks like people seem to really love the Better Live Than Dead podcasts on that application.
Yeah, I truth be told, I had never even heard of it until I think you had made mention of it. Or I don't even know how it came to be, how I found out about Bullhorn, but it was astounding to me to see the numbers from there that came there. So, and it's the BLTD branded ones, which is I find interesting, because my personal ones seem to be very, very popular on Pandora. And don't even sniff anything on Bullhorn. So it was very, very interesting.
This is the fun part about statistics, is that you can look through that and say, oh, where do the people come from? What do they listen to? How long do they stay? All that stuff. It's really cool.
Yeah. My listeners, my personal listeners for the JC Money Show and listen in, all Pandora. So Pandora folks, if you are there, guess what? I am here too. So why don't you give this podcast some love too? That'd be great.
It would be wild. I would love some Pandora listeners, but hey. Buffalo keeps it close on last Sunday's game against the Baltimore Ravens, but ultimately falls 24-17. Despite the loss, John, which we'll talk about here shortly, Buffalo finds themselves in the driver's seat. Now, the three big things, I was looking for positives for this game because, I mean, it was a loss, so it kind of has a different aura to it. But the Buffalo Bills held their own against arguably the best team, or definitely the best team in the AFC, arguably one of the best teams in the National Football League. And like I said, John, they just the way to put it is they just hung around. Mm-hmm. Buffalo's offense did struggle against a very good Baltimore defense. Josh Allen was 17 of 39, 146 yards, one touchdown with 2 rushes for 9 yards. But after Baltimore took a 24-9 lead, Buffalo most certainly turned up the heat and held Baltimore's feet to the fire. Late in the game, there was a great pass breakup by cornerback Marcus Peters, which took away what likely would have been a game-tying touchdown pass on 4th down late in the fourth quarter. But again, resilient is the word of the day here on the podcast. Despite being handled offensively, John, the offense did not give up.
No, they didn't give up, and very much consistent with how they've been all season, particularly when it comes to the fourth quarter. You know, I mentioned in weeks past that this is a fourth quarter team, and they certainly, lived up to that moniker, and we're within a touchdown of possibly tying or putting themselves in an even greater position to win the game. So the fact that they were, despite Allen's inaccuracies and all that, you mentioned the stat line earlier on, the defense was key in containing Lamar Jackson as best as they could, and containing that offense. So, I mean, for a team that routinely puts up 45 to 55 points a game in Baltimore, to be held to 24, I know still, 24 points is a lot, and for normal teams in football, but for Baltimore and the way that they've been playing, especially all season, that's big. Perhaps they took our advice. Perhaps the Bills defensive coordinators listened to our podcast last week and watched San Francisco 49er tapes and footage to kind of get an idea of the nuisances. Like I'm seeing Baltimore as I'm looking over, my left shoulder here to the monitor here with the Ravens Jets games, and I see their strategy is basically pound it down the Jets' throats because their defense is not very good, especially without Jamal Adams on there. But they didn't, it didn't feel like they were completely having their way with the Bills' defense or secondary, for that matter, at least from the bits and pieces that I was able to see.
And it didn't feel like Buffalo was out of the game. I mean, despite the fact that they struggled, which was expected, they didn't feel out of the game. And that to me, it's one of those situations where, I mean, it's been no secret this entire season, my confidence levels with the Buffalo Bills have kind of been a little shoddy, just because I've rode shotgun this entire time for the last 2 decades and watched this team do things like this and respond and fall completely flat. Mm-hmm. Where on Sunday, despite the fact that Buffalo got kicked in the mouth for lack of a better explanation, perfect example. The offensive line was manhandled in the first couple quarters. Josh Allen ended up being sacked 6 times overall on Sunday, but they did make the adjustments. Josh Allen, very inaccurate early on, but was able to adjust and somehow find a way to get some passes completed and get some points on the board. Like I said, though, even though Buffalo lost, they hung with the best team in the AFC. And for me, as I mentioned, that confidence level really goes from, I think they'll get into, they might be able to win a game or two because that defense is very good. And if Josh Allen can be better than he was against Baltimore, Buffalo should be able to hang around and do their thing.
I do think, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there. And even more than just Baltimore, because Baltimore is playing at a different level and they've got all sorts of momentum going with them right now. But the key thing to look at here, and I haven't even gone through the notes, so maybe you'll hit on this, maybe you won't. New England lost 2. And New England looks very, very beatable. They do not.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
They don't scare the league anymore.
We call that a tease.
That's a tease. All right, very good. Go ahead then.
Kind of like when you get the free little clip of the naked girl, but then you got to pay the extra money to get into the website. That's what that is. It's a tease.
What sites do you go to where you're paying for that stuff?
I'm not. It was the first thing I thought of. The defense, the second of the 3 big things, the defense handled Lamar Jackson. Likely MVP, which, I mean, there's no doubt about it at this point. If Lamar Jackson doesn't win the MVP, I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
Yeah, I can't imagine anybody coming close to winning the MVP now at this point.
He was held to his 3rd lowest passing yard total of the season, 145, and the 2nd lowest rushing total of the season, 40 yards. He threw his first interception since a Week 5 win over Pittsburgh, where he threw 3 interceptions in a game that week. Despite throwing 3 touchdown passes, Buffalo did their job well against Jackson. And then another thing, too, to pay attention to, Baltimore averaged over 200 rushing yards per game. Buffalo held Baltimore to 118 rushing yards on 33 carries, only 3.6 yards per carry. So again, Buffalo knew what they had to do to potentially put themselves in position to secure a victory.
Well,
and
for perspective, they really did, but for perspective there, I think with 4 minutes into this game against the Jets, the Ravens already eclipsed 118 rushing yards.
The math, 64, 52, and 6. They've run the ball 12 times. So 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, 114. Yeah, 122 rushing yards on 12 attempts.
Already.
Yeah, and a touchdown already.
So put that, so there's your perspective, Bills fans. If you were thinking, yeah, but we still lost, look at that.
But here's the thing. If the defense plays that well against a Kansas City or a Houston or a Tennessee or whomever they may play, if they make the playoffs, which again, We'll talk about here shortly, it's possible. Anything is possible.
Well, the
NFL has been very weird this year. Very weird this year.
It has been, and I will tell you, I think with Kansas City, Mahomes, I feel like Mahomes is playing hurt. He's not the same. He's not been playing the same as I'm used to seeing. And
well, remember, he's got if I'm not mistaken, he's had a knee, an ankle, and now his hand is messed up.
That would explain
He's an absolute warrior.
That would explain it. That would explain it. So
remember the first game, I think it was like the third game of the season. He came out, he threw for like 17,000 yards, 955 touchdowns, and then he had that high ankle sprain, or alleged high ankle sprain, and then he had the dislocated kneecap, and then last week he hit his hand. And I was reading today, actually, I saw something about his hand was all swollen. I almost said swolled up like an idiot. It was swollen. So again, I don't think he's 100%, but at this time of the football season, who is,
Right.
He just may be a little more beat up than others.
And let's just see here. Oh, the Ravens just scored again. Was it Andrews?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'll take the points there then. I got him on one of my teams.
For those who don't know, if we should have mentioned this in the break, it is semifinal week in fantasy football championships. I myself am in the semifinals of the Wolfe and Center Football League, looking to go back to back. I don't think I've ever done it before.
I should have beaten your dad last week.
John, you lost to my father last week.
I should have beaten him. I had a much better team than him, and it just, of course, it had to happen that my guys didn't show up to play. That's the story of what happens in that league with me. I'll go on a run.
Did they take the touchdown off the board?
Did they? It looks like they did.
Oh, wow. Okay. No touchdown. Okay, anyways. We're watching a game and talking about another game at the same time. Looking back at the stats.
Talking about one team.
Exactly. Looking back at the stats here, just two quick stats for you. Josh Allen, 19 straight game with a touchdown. He surpasses Jim Kelly for the second longest streak in team history. Doug Flutie, 20 straight games, holds the record. And Cole Beasley has 2 3-game receiving touchdown streaks this season, joining Bill Brooks in 1995 as the only Bills player to do so. Beasley also set a single-season career high with his 6th receiving touchdown on the season. So Cole Beasley's having a year. Josh Allen is consistent.
And we got one. I got one more stat for you here.
Dogs and cats living together. I don't know.
Stephen Hauschka hit all 3 of his field goal attempts.
That was a good stat.
That was a great stat. All things considering, Sean McDermott put in a waiver claim for Chase McLaughlin, and he ended up landing in Indianapolis. But that might have been the proverbial kick in the pants that Hauschka needed, because again, hitting all 3 of his field goal attempts, he has not been money Hauschka that he has been for the past XYZ amount of years.
Yeah, the Hausch money mantra has not been there. Because again, it's one of those situations where it seems like every time we think he's gone, he brings us right back.
Right.
And that's definitely the situation. I mean, I don't think, to be quite honest, I don't think Hauschka is going to have a job next year. And if he does have a job next year, it's going to be very difficult. He's going to have a lot of competition. I
feel he'll play. He'll have to play for his job.
Absolutely.
It's not automatic. He'll have to play for his job. But
I absolutely agree with that 110% here.
No doubt.
Our look ahead brought to you by 26 Shirts, 26shirts.com. As always, facebook.com/26 Shirts, at 26 Shirts on Twitter and Instagram. I know we kind of rolled through the podcast really quick here, but I want to spend some time talking playoffs, talking the rest of the AFC, and then talk about Week 15, which is a very big matchup for the Buffalo Bills. So first off, John, our playoff outlook, Clinch Watch continues after 14 weeks. The Buffalo Bills currently sit, let's see here, in 5th in the AFC. According to 538.com, the Buffalo Bills currently hold a 95% chance of making the playoffs. Right now, as a podcast time, the AFC is as follows: Baltimore, New England, Kansas City, Houston, Buffalo, and Pittsburgh. If the season ended today, which we know it will not, Buffalo would head to Houston for a wild card weekend matchup. Buffalo holds a 1-game lead over 6th, which is Pittsburgh at 8-5 with 3 games to play. We'll talk about them in just a moment. But John, Houston, Tennessee, a big matchup this week. That could determine potentially who the Buffalo Bills play in the wild card matchup if they are to make the playoffs. So again, a lot of moving parts at this point in time. But with that being said, Buffalo is in a very, very, very good spot with just a few weeks remaining.
They're in a tremendous spot. This is the spot that all teams that are not, in contention for the division want to be in. The thing is, Buffalo is still very much in contention for the division as well. So every week they're going to keep coming out there and they're going to keep playing their best. And I know that it's winning they're in this week, as you, I see, have highlighted here. But I heard over and over again through sports radio over the course of the week, winning you're in for Buffalo. That's great. They're still going to want to play for the division. They're still going to want to punch New England in the mouth.
It's going to take a lot for Buffalo to win the division. They'll need some help. But New England will have to lose to Cincinnati or Miami, I believe it is. But well,
I mean, hey, they could be the Jets and do that. I mean,
crazier things have happened.
That's happened.
Crazier things have happened. Now, you mentioned the winning you're in. That is something that we will certainly talk about here in just a moment. But I mean, just looking at what Buffalo has done to put themselves in this position last week, to put it into perspective, how well everything broke for the Buffalo Bills. If Buffalo had beaten Baltimore last week with all the help that they got from other teams winning and losing, Buffalo would have clinched a playoff spot last weekend. So again, at this point in time, it certainly appears that Buffalo needs to win one of three. They need to beat Pittsburgh on Sunday Night Football. They need to beat New England Saturday, a week from Saturday, or beat the Jets.
Which they should at least beat the Jets. But here's the thing: what happens, Mr. Stat Guy, if the Bills lose out? Are they completely eliminated from playoff contention, or would they need the proverbial Andy Dalton magic again, so to speak, to back their way?
I believe, I have not done those numbers, but I would believe they would need. I would presume they would need some help. But like I said, Buffalo's in a perfect position right now. Where
they're in a great position, and not to say that
the pressure really very much is off of them right now.
No, not necessarily. I don't think that.
I would say if it were, let's think about another team here. Let me pop these stats up here real quick.
See, while you do that, the reason why I say I don't think the pressure is off of them is because there's still pressure on Pittsburgh, there's pressure on New England, and there's pressure on the Jets. And I will tell you why. Because Pittsburgh still, no Bell, no Brown, no Ben, no Juju, and they're still in contention. Like, nobody thought Pittsburgh would do anything this season, and yet they've got a chance to guarantee, at the very least, a winning season with a largely depleted team. They want to be able to at the very least do that. So they're going to be coming this Sunday night to play, and Tomlin's going to have those boys going. New England's got pressure. New England's got pressure.
I'm saying the pressure's off in terms of they are so close. The win and you're in. It really allows them to just focus on what they can control.
Right.
Because at this point, it's not you win, yes, but you need a ton of help. It's literally win one of three. That's all you need to do.
But what I'm saying is, if they
have a bad game against Pittsburgh, you have a bad game against Pittsburgh. Come back for New England next week and win that game. If you lose in New England and Pittsburgh, come back and beat the Jets. It's not like they need to win out to have a chance.
Right.
They just need to win one game.
Right, they need to win one game, but that's the problem, is that if they come in too relaxed against a team like Pittsburgh, who's thinking, who's thinking we very much have pressure on us to prove that we can play and that this depleted team can be something. There's pressure on New England because they're feeling the heat from the Buffalo Bills. They're feeling the nationwide love of the Buffalo Bills, and they're realizing they're not the super team that everybody thought that they were going to be this year. And that they're very, very beatable. So they're going to want to silence the Bills Mafia right away. And then that takes you to the Jets. Now, when this is all speaking in hypotheticals here, because I personally believe Buffalo's beating Pittsburgh this week. But hypothetically speaking, the Bills lose the next two. Now I feel the pressure's back on because the Jets have absolutely nothing to play for.
Well, if that
and they
were the
want
case,
to
absolutely.
prove that they should have beaten the Bills in the first game, in week one. And I guarantee you that these guys are going to want to. They're not going to lay down and say, "Well, we want you to beat New England, so here you go, guys, have a free win." Like they're going to want to knock a division rival out. And that's just the way it's going to be. So I feel that they need to win. At the very least, they need to win this week. They absolutely have to. And then the pressure's off. Rest Josh Allen the rest of the way,
You know what actually might be the best scenario is beat Pittsburgh this week, clinch the playoff spot, and go into New England on that Saturday night with literally nothing to lose.
Exactly. That's exactly what needs to happen.
And just play like your hair's on fire.
Right. And if you win, you win. If you don't, you're still in. It doesn't matter. You don't need to win the division, more or less.
I would love it. I would love it. And I know we're jumping ahead here, but I would love it if the Bills won the division. It'll take a lot for it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, it speaks volumes as to what the Buffalo Bills have done this season, that it's December 12th and the New England Patriots have not yet clinched the division.
Right. It's crazy.
By now in past seasons, New England's the 1 seed. They're coasting to another Super Bowl appearance. Everyone has written them in as as the next Super Bowl champions. Where this time around, the pressure's on.
Right, and the pressure's very much on New England. And Brady plays under pressure. He plays very well under pressure. So that's nothing to sleep on there. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Usually by now, and there's only been I think 2 other times in the entire tenure of Brady Belichick. Where this was not the case, but it boiled down to the last week each time, where it was the Jets that won the division, I think in 2003 with Herm Edwards. And then it was the Miami Dolphins in 2008. And that went down to the last week as well. And it was very famously when the season that Brady got hurt, that Favre was in New York, Pennington was shipped over to Miami, and the Patriots missed the playoffs at 11-5.
So what's helping out the Bills right now before we talk about this week's game here? Looking at the schedule, week 15, week 16, week 17, you've got Indianapolis playing the Saints this week. Indianapolis is a team that's hanging around potentially for a wild card berth. You've got Tennessee playing Houston, so that's a big swing right there. Looking across the board at the rest of the schedule, it's kind of those are really the only big matchups for the Bills, I believe. Week 16. Kind of the same thing. Just taking a look. Week 16, I mean, the Titans play the Saints. You've got the Colts playing the Panthers. Houston plays Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's been playing out of their mind recently, some way, shape, or form. They're all of a sudden good again. You know what? One thing, I know this isn't the BLTD podcast, but for the amount of touchdowns Jameis Winston throws and the amount of passing yards he throws for, it blows my mind just to think how much better he would be if he stopped throwing interceptions.
Well, yes, but there, what the one thing that I keep seeing is the comparisons year by year with him and Peyton Manning, and we all know how well that turned out for Peyton Manning. So perhaps Jameis Winston could rebound. I mean, that's certainly a very
slippery slope that they're walking down.
Right. It is a very slippery slope they're walking down because there are games with Winston that he looks on fire. Like
there are ways you can manipulate stats, and I think that's a very good way to manipulate stats. If he comes back and is the next greatest quarterback in the National Football League, I'll be more than happy to eat crow. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think so.
You don't think Tampa would let him go, and then New England picks him up and wins with him?
Whatever you're smoking, please, by all means. So looking at week 17 real quick, John.
Some good crab legs right now.
Week 17, another very important week. You've got the Ravens and the Steelers. You've got the Titans and Houston again for the second week, in the second out of 3 weeks, 2 out of 3 weeks, I should say. Mm-hmm. Colts and Jags. I mean, there are a lot of other big matchups that will fall whichever way they may. So again, even if Buffalo doesn't win this week, they should be getting some help in some way, shape, or form that will help them out ultimately. Now, Looking at Week 15, John, we've talked about it a bunch here, but we'll continue to talk because why not? The Buffalo Bills travel to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. John, it's the first time the Buffalo Bills have been on Sunday Night Football since 2007, a 56-10 loss in Buffalo to the New England Patriots on November 18th. It's the first Buffalo and Pittsburgh night game since 1996, which was Monday Night Football. September 16th, 1996, a 24-6 loss to the Steelers in Pittsburgh.
Now that was the Cordell Stewart-led Pittsburgh Steelers back then.
I would presume so.
Good old Cordell Stewart.
Now, Pittsburgh is expected it's looking like they're going to get James Conner running back and wide receiver Juju Smith-Schuster back to the lineup. The two things I want to ask you about, first off, the quarterback. Pittsburgh's quarterback, Devlin Hodges, known as Duck. I'll tell you why in a second. He's the first undrafted rookie NFL quarterback to win his first 3 starts since Ed Rubbert did it in 1987 with Washington. Now, you wonder where the nickname comes, Duck. An ESPN article from October 2019 from Brooke Pryor points out the nickname Duck comes from his days at Samford for his, quote, prowess at duck calling. He won the 2000, Devlin Hodges being won the 2009 Junior World Duck Calling Contest at age 13 and won the 2019 Alabama State Duck Calling Championship. Quite a resume for the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback.
That is quite the resume. I don't know that there have been many duck callers that at least that I'm aware of in the National Football League, more or less playing in a city like Pittsburgh, whom is probably as far away from any sort of duck calling culture as, New York is from being polite. That's an interesting. It's an interesting article.
Ryan Fitzpatrick went to Harvard. You're going to hear about it a bunch on Sunday night, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Now, the one player I do want to talk about, another surprise, another Watt that's very good at football. Pittsburgh linebacker T.J. Watt, a potential defensive player of the year. John, this year he has 12.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 6 pass deflections, 5 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, 12 tackles for a loss, and 29 quarterback hits. Something about the Watts and being really good at playing defense in the National Football League. I'm not sure what it is, but holy crap.
Yeah, and those numbers should scare the Bills. That really is going to put that offensive line to the test, because Pittsburgh's defensive line, not a terrible front line. And when you have somebody with the skill set of a TJ Watt, and those Watt boys, they're when healthy, especially, JJ Watt might be coming back this year too, by the way. I don't know if you heard that, but I read that somewhere. Nuts. But those boys are bred to throw people around and hit people. So I would anticipate him getting Josh Allen out of the pocket a lot, and that could open up the opportunity for somebody on the other side to slow down his running game. This could be a real tricky matchup. Considering that Pittsburgh's defense has been a lot of the reason as to why that they're in the position that they're in right now. With their offense playing good enough. Again, Tomlin, a defensive guy, he's going to coach his boys up. So,
and I honestly think that Mike Tomlin, people have been saying that Mike Tomlin, he's quite possibly a coach of the year candidate. I would say he's going to get a ton of votes for sure. Just solely based on John Harbaugh will probably win it because he's been fantastic with working in a system for Lamar Jackson and making the MVP and all that, and with the defense as well. But think about this. Mike Tomlin has an 8-win football team with their third-string quarterback out there. Mason Rudolph. Ben Roethlisberger gets hurt. Mason Rudolph comes in and gets hurt. Devlin Hodges plays. Rudolph comes back, gets benched. Now Hodges is back in. A third-string undrafted rookie quarterback, and they're still winning football games. It's unreal. But that goes to show you just how creative, smart, talented Mike Tomlin is as a head coach.
Mike Tomlin is an incredible head coach, a Hall of Fame head coach, in my opinion. And he has done a good enough job to take the light away from the Myles Garrett helmet swing, being the Pittsburgh Steelers' big highlight this season, and turned it into, okay, well, we've patched up the quarterback with a duck caller, and we're on the cusp of the playoffs.
For the record, though, I will not refer to Mike Tomlin as future Hall of Fame head coach Mike Tomlin.
Why not?
Because only one man gets that. It's Patrick Mahomes. Only one.
He's future. Well, yeah, I mean, but I suppose he could. Head coach is a different position than a quarterback.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know. He's going to the Hall of Fame. So is Patrick Mahomes.
He's very good. He's very good. Now, the one thing Josh Allen struggled with last week against the Ravens was the blitz, and the offensive line struggled with the blitz. I expect this week Pittsburgh's going to throw a lot of pressure. Next week, New England's going to throw a lot of pressure. Josh Allen is going to get a lot of on-the-job training and ability to adjust to the blitz. Excuse me. And that should really help him out as long as he can adjust to that. Because if he doesn't, it's going to be a very, very long and painful Sunday night for him.
What you don't want Josh Allen to do is throw on the run, because that's when he chucks the ball 10 yards ahead of John Brown. That's when what Bills fans don't want is for Josh Allen to be throwing on the run. What Steelers Nation, I'm sure, wants is that very thing, because that's when, I've noticed a lot of his inaccuracies happen when he's throwing on the run, when he's feeling pressured. So if the offensive line could just keep it cool, and Josh Allen, doesn't have to use his legs very much or use them sparingly, I think this should be a good one. This should be an easy one, not an easy one, but this should be a win for the Bills. They should be able to get in after Sunday Night Football. And I like I said, I have the Bills over the Steelers, despite my my affection for Mike Tomlin and how he's coaching his otherwise garbage team.
I really hope for the same, for sure. I would love to see the Buffalo Bills win and you're in. That'd be great to cap off of a weekend and head towards that Saturday Night Football game with the New England Patriots, not having to worry about a whole lot, aside from just whooping Tom Brady's ass. But that's me as a fan speaking. But again, I think that Pittsburgh is a tough opponent, but Buffalo should be able to do enough to handle them and win the game.
They're playing in Pittsburgh, right?
Yep.
Okay, so it's a tough place to play, especially on prime time. But the Bills Mafia travels well. So even though the Steelers fans are known for traveling well, and obviously that's their home stadium, so they're going to be there, I think the Bills will be very well represented. I think it's gonna be a good game. I'm very much looking forward to watching it.
I absolutely agree. It's going to be tough Sunday waking up and watching all the games and just thinking to myself, I'm getting hyped up for Sunday night. As Carrie Underwood said, she says so graciously, waiting. I've been waiting all day for Sunday night. That's going to be me on Sunday.
Shut up, Ryan.
I knew that was coming. I was hoping I could pull it out of you.
That was the shut up, Ryan. That was the shut up, Ryan. Segue right there.
Yeah, we need like a segment like the shut up Ryan moment of the segment of the podcast brought to you by whatever. And that's what we need in the podcast.
Yeah, no, let's not do that.
John, we could monetize this. We can make some cash off it.
We can. You know what? Ladies and gentlemen, shopgear.com.
The Shut Up Ryan moment of the podcast brought to you by Preparation H.
No, shopgear.com. Buy your Preparation H on shopgear.com. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say condoms, but, Preparation H sound better.
What are those?
Jesus Christ. How many kids do you actually have?
Huh?
Next on Maury Povich.
Oh, yeah. 2 that I know of.
Well, hey, that's a good spot to wrap up the podcast.
Very good. Very good. So, we just took it right downhill there. That's the way we ended it.
A right turn. John is at I am JC Money. I am at Wolf BLTD. Again, check out the podcast wherever you get it. If you want it somewhere else, let us know. We'll make it happen for you. But again, we are Trust the Podcast.
You're not.
Win and you are in. That is all the Buffalo Bills need to do. As always, trust the process, trust the podcast, and go Bills.
Do it up. The preceding presentation has been brought to you by the Gear Network.